Be sure to follow Godzilla Raids on Letterboxd. And if you don't, I will turn you into a sheep. Anyways, enjoy the video.
Hello my fellow kaiju fans, I'm Godzilla Gaiji and welcome back to the Triple G cast. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be continuing to look at the Showa Godzilla era with Godzilla Raids Again. Now, this is, as many of you probably know, known as a movie that was very rushed during its production. So it isn't exactly the most polished movie out there. However, does the movie still have some merit to it, despite it being rushed? Well, that's what we're gonna try and find out today. At least, in my opinion. Anyways, there's not really a whole lot for me to say other than that, so I think we're just gonna get into the movie information after I give you a quick spoiler warning. There are going to be spoilers for Godzilla Raids Again in this video, so if you have not seen it, which I would assume that you have seen it, but in the small case that you haven't, then watch the movie first and then come back to the video. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get on to the information about the movie itself. So Godzilla Raids Again came out in 1955 and is directed by Motoyoshi Oda. The cast includes Hiroshi Koizumi, Setsuko Wakayama, Minoru Chiaki, and Takashi Shimura in the main roles, among others. Sorry if I butchered any of those names. The movie has an 82-minute runtime, and now for a quick plot synopsis from Letterboxd. Two fishing scout pilots make a horrifying discovery when they encounter a second Godzilla alongside a new monster named Anguirus. Without the weapon that killed the original, authorities attempt to lure Godzilla away from the mainland. But Anguirus soon arrives, and the two monsters make their way towards Osaka as Japan braces for tragedy. And with the information out of the way, let's get on to the opinions I have about the movie itself. As usual, I'm going to go through my 5 bullet points of the story, the characters, the kaiju stuff, the music, and finally, the other things I want to talk about. So, let's start with the story. And the story here is a bit interesting because a part of it is sort of a rehash of the first movie, with, the whole kaijus coming along and, destroying a city and the government and the authorities trying to find a way to stop them. And the other half is the first and pretty fun, honestly, kaiju brawl in the Godzilla franchise. Now, unfortunately, there are some elements of the movie that I feel like are rushed, and that's because they are, because again, this movie was rushed. For example, in the last act, Kobayashi, one of the main characters, sacrifices himself, and in doing that, he kind of figures out, or the other characters figure out the way that they're going to stop Godzilla. However, unlike Dr. Serizawa's sacrifice in 1954, it doesn't feel like this huge thing. It feels like it just comes out of nowhere, to be honest. Like, he just kamikazes into the wall and he just dies. Like, that's all he does. Like, yeah, it serves a purpose, I guess, but it just feels very flimsy and just doesn't feel very well integrated into the movie itself, like the story. I just don't really think I think they could have pulled that off a lot better, and it also could have been way more emotional. Like, yeah, we do have a little bit of a reaction from our main character, but like, I don't feel like it was enough. I feel like that should have had more weight to it. Now, there are also some dark moments in this movie, similar to 1954. However, unfortunately, they aren't as effective. They're not bad, like, they work fine, but they aren't as good. Like, for example, after the kaiju rampage to the city, like Godzilla did in the first movie, we don't really get to see the effects of this. We only get to see the city itself destroyed. Which, I mean, that's better than nothing, but in Godzilla 1954, you actually got to see how that negatively affected the civilians and everything. You got to see regular people suffering and dying of both the destruction and of the atomic, the nuclear, sicknesses and stuff like that. You actually got to see how it affected the civilians and the innocents. Here you don't really get that, so the dark moments just don't hit as hard. Again, they're fine, but I really think they could have done it in a better way. Also, this movie has a bit of a tone issue. There are some comedic scenes in this movie that just feel very out of place. Like, for example, after Godzilla and Anguirus have their whole brawl and destroy the city, like 5 or 10 minutes after that, there are like these light-hearted scenes where characters are just joking with each other. Now, I'm not saying that these scenes shouldn't be in the movie. I think these scenes are fine on their own, and I think it's okay for them to include it. You know, you need some light moments in a pretty dark movie and stuff like that. I get that. However, I just think they should have put them in somewhere else, because they clash very hard with the tone that they were trying to set up and the emotions that they were trying to make us feel. I just don't think they should have these very light-hearted moments after seeing a city that has just been destroyed by giant monsters. So yeah, I think they could have done it a little bit better than that. Also, I have to mention that the ending is decent, or like the final, like, I guess, final, like, kind of like in the first, in Godzilla 1954, you had one of the characters having this, like, little line about, like, the threats of nuclear weapons and stuff like that. And this movie has something similar to that, with the main character talking about his best friend who sacrificed himself and stuff like that. However, to me it isn't nearly as impactful because of the fact that they don't kill Godzilla. Like, in 1954, like, the movie ends with Godzilla being destroyed. However, in this movie, they just bury him in ice, and I think that's really dumb, because, like, they haven't solved their problem. Like, they really think that ice is going to contain that giant atomic lizard forever? Like, no, not at all. So I think that's kind of ridiculous, to be honest. And finally, there's one more thing I want to talk about with the story, and that's that there is this pointless police chase scene, like, around the half-hour mark in the film, which, like, I don't understand why that scene is in the movie at all. It serves no purpose to the story or anything. It just kind of exists. Like, was it just to, like, wake up the audience? Because, like, this happens, like, when Godzilla is, like, arriving at the mainland. So, like, what? You didn't need to wake us up. It was already interesting. We were already invested. Like, I don't understand this scene. And also, I think it's really dumb that the main characters just get roped into the scene just because the cops need a car to chase the criminals. So yeah, I think this whole scene was just completely unneeded and just didn't really serve much of a purpose. So yeah, I wasn't a fan of that scene. Anyways, wow, I'm talking way too much about the story here, so I'll just end it with saying that the story itself is fine, or most of it is, but it has all these small little things and elements that just weigh it down, and it doesn't make the story nearly as engaging as 1954's. On its own, it's okay, but it's just kind of there. It's just kind of whatever. And the same can pretty much be said about the characters. Most of them are passable, but I didn't really care for anyone here, maybe except for Kobayashi a little bit. I mean, I still didn't feel that much when he died. However, I still think he was one of the more enjoyable characters, so I'll give the movie that at least. But overall, most of the characters were just underdeveloped and not really that memorable. Like, I'm not gonna say that 1954 had these super complex and deep characters, but like, at the very least, like, I remember Dr. Serizawa, and I actually remember his internal struggle with, like, whether to use his weapon or not. In this movie, I can't really say the same thing. Again, maybe except a little bit for Kobayashi, but it's definitely not enough to make him one of my favorite characters in the Godzilla franchise. So overall, the characters in this movie are just kind of alright. Though I will say I did like some of the character interactions, despite some of them being placed at inappropriate times. So I did enjoy a couple of those scenes, so I'll give the movie that as well. But overall, the characters, just kind of whatever. And now for the kaiju stuff. Now, this movie introduces Anguirus, which is great because I love Anguirus. However, I feel like they don't really treat him that well in the movie. Like, he only appears for like the first 30 minutes of the movie. Or no, sorry, 40 minutes of the film. And then he just dies, and it's just only halfway through the movie. Like, what? He isn't even part of the climax? Like, what's happening here? Like, why wasn't the fight between Godzilla and Anguirus the climax? Like, the actual climax they used is so much more interesting. It's just them trying to cover Godzilla in ice. Like that's not nearly as intriguing or as fun to watch as a kaiju brawl. So I really wish they would have had the final battle of the movie be a fight between Godzilla and Anguirus. Another thing that I don't really like are the suits. Like, I understand why they look how they do, because this movie was rushed and it was the first time they were trying to do a kaiju fight in a movie. So I understand why their suits aren't perfect, but there are a lot of shots where the suits just look bad. Honestly, I don't really like the suits in this film that much. However, for a positive here, the battle between Godzilla and Anguirus is great, except for some of the unnecessary speed up bits. I don't know why they sped up some of the footage here, it just looks weird. But anyways, the rest of the fight is really great actually, and I think it's because it's probably the most realistic fight in the Godzilla franchise. Like, this whole fight feels like two real world animals fighting, honestly just way bigger. And I think this is because of the lack of any atomic breath or over the top like karate moves. Like, yeah, there are some moves that you can like maybe see as wrestling moves, like when Godzilla just slams Anguirus into that giant building. But overall, the fight just feels like two animals fighting each other. And I think that's really cool, and it makes the battle really unique. So overall, for being the first kaiju brawl in the Godzilla series, I think the fight between Godzilla and Anguirus is actually pretty good. So, good job, movie. You got that right, at least. Now, for the music, I don't really have a whole lot to say. Like, I think the music in this movie is decent. Like, both the things that are taken from 1954 and the new stuff, I think is pretty good. And like, yeah, obviously the stuff from 1954 is great. Though I can't really give the movie itself too much credit for that, because they just take music from another film. But still, the new music here is alright, so I don't really have any complaints with it. Overall, Masaru Sato did a good job on this one, so yeah, can't really say much more about the music here. It's just pretty good. And actually, same goes for other things I want to talk about. There's not really a whole lot I can talk about that I haven't done already. Though I do just want to again mention, I think the ending is pretty lame. Like, the whole climax of this movie is just very underwhelming. First of all, them not actually killing Godzilla doesn't give as much weight to the ending as the first Godzilla did. Like, they just incapacitate him basically, and he breaks out in the next movie, so it doesn't really feel like a conclusive ending. If anything, it feels like a part one of like a 2 parts story or something like that. Also, like I said, Kobayashi's sacrifice felt kind of forced and out of nowhere. So overall, I don't really like the ending of this movie. Like the things before that aren't like amazing, except for the Godzilla and Anguirus fight. But I still think the ending stands out as particularly disappointing. So yeah. Anyways, that was it for my thoughts on the movie, and now let's go to my conclusion. And honestly, Godzilla Raids Again is a clearly rushed movie that lacks in a lot of areas. Like, yeah, it does have a good kaiju fight in it, it has a couple of passable characters, and it has a decent score. However, most of the movie is just very bland and not very memorable to me. And a lot of it is just lacking. Again, it's very clear that this movie was rushed. You can really feel that and see it when you're watching the film. So, overall, it's not terrible, but also I wouldn't call it good either. And as a sequel, it's pretty lackluster, especially when you consider how excellent its predecessor is. So overall, I'm going to give Godzilla Raids Again a 4.5 out of 10. Again, not terrible, but not good either. And one that I'm not particularly interested in rewatching anytime soon. Anyways guys, those were my thoughts on Godzilla Raids Again. If you guys enjoyed the video, as usual, be sure to give it a like, it would really help out a lot, and also be sure to comment what you think about Godzilla Raids Again. I would really enjoy hearing you guys' opinions. Also, if you're enjoying my content and you haven't already, then be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications for whenever I upload a new video. Anyways guys, that was it for the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!